Welcome back to the Bravery Blueprint. And Brian and I are excited about today's guest. Today we have Dr. Mark Sherwood. He operates the functional medical. What up, guys? I got some background noise going on here. Could you guys hit mute for me when I do this? I don't know what's going on in the background, but there's something pretty loud in the background. All right, here we go again. Welcome back to the Bravery Blueprint. Brian and I are excited about today's guest. Today's guest is Dr. Mark Sherwood. He operates the Functional Medical Institute with his wife, and he's a former professional baseball player and a retired law enforcement officer with over 24 years of service that included the SWAT team, among many other things. Mark was a former candidate for governor in the state of Oklahoma, and he's written several best-selling books, along with producing several movies. He's spoken to audiences across the world, and he firmly believes that each person has an awesome destiny and purpose in life, which can be revealed only through the pursuit of total wellness. We're super excited to have you, Mark. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well, Travis. Thank you so much for you and Brian having me. I'm super honored to be with you today.
Well, we have to stop reading your resume because the show would be hours and hours long. But before we get started, let's just sort of bring us up to speed, because I know you did many things in law enforcement, but you have pivoted in such a healthy way into what you're doing now. And your purpose in life is helping, very few people in law enforcement help the amount of people they do in law enforcement, but then they leave law enforcement, they continue to help even more people like you're doing. So talk to us about your retirement and how you sort of shifted and pivoted to the success you are today.
Well, I don't know the word retire is probably appropriate, because I didn't really retire. I just kind of shifted in the sense of, the protection and service, Travis and Brian. That's always been part of who I am. And it's a calling, man. It's not a job. Everybody knows that's been in law enforcement. There's a call to help people that are bullied, picked on, beaten, crime victims. You're just kind of fighting against the system of evil, if you will. And even that's within all of us, isn't it? Right. So the idea of protection and service just really expanded, and nothing's changed with who I am. It's just kind of a lot's changed with how I do it anymore. So, you mentioned movies and books and things like that. I enjoy those things. And I enjoy, helping people get healthy physically and emotionally. At the same time, it all fits into that same funnel of just trying to help mankind be better, so they can have a good life.
Well, Mark, I know Brian's on the same page with me. Like, we're trying to push a mindset like you have to the masses in the profession from an emotional standpoint, physical standpoint, leadership standpoint, but it can be a struggle. Why do you think there's not more people in law enforcement that have progressed like you have outside of it? I mean, is there something blocking them or stopping them from doing, similar things to what you've done, maybe a different way, but, staying busy and staying active and keeping your purpose?
Yeah, there is. As a matter of fact, I had this conversation I was in Palm Springs recently speaking at a conference, but at the same time, as I was getting into town in the hotel for my conference, there was a police and fire pension conference there. So, naturally I was kind of inquisitive about what was going on. And the same conversation, the same question was asking me about one of the leaders in that organization. And I had the same answer I'm going to give you right now. It's a leadership problem. And I've tried many, many times. As you know, Travis, we worked together, man, blood, sweat, and tears. I had this idea, this is kind of an introspective concept right now. This idea, man, even after retirement, I was going to go back and give back. I'm saying give back. I can't get anybody to accept my volunteer work. It's that bad. Police officers are blocked from leadership, from understanding that wellness is an officer safety issue. It couldn't be any further from the truth. If you're not healthy physically, emotionally, and spiritually, you're not going to survive. And I'm not talking about just physically dying. You're not going to live mentally. And how many people we know of have died prematurely that wore the badge, honored their city, their state, their nation. I mean, it doesn't have to be like that. And I've watched many people succumb to life, and then look at the statistics out there. The average age of death for the retired 20-year male service officer is somewhere in the mid-60s. That's not okay. And it's never been okay. And I've spent the better part of 5 or 10 years post-retirement trying to work that into my life because I really wanted to be a blessing. And I think it's leadership because, like anything else, if you don't have a chief or a sheriff that's actually doing that and pushes that agenda and lives it from the top down and just says, do what I say, not what I do, it's the sort of the epitome of hypocrisy, isn't it? And that goes across the board. So I don't have, any really good stories of reports that I've been able to help law enforcement, even in this job here. It's unfortunate. I probably got maybe that many people out of 25,000.
That's counting me, right?
Yeah, there's one right there. Yeah, but it's kind of sad to me, and frankly, it's heartbreaking.
Well, Mark, first I got to back up a little bit, and when Travis said you were coming on and doing some research, functional medicine just pops into my brain because number one, my wife's a functional medicine health coach, and when she first got that degree, people were like, "What is functional medicine? Isn't all medicine functional?" And I think we're very fortunate in the lifestyle that we lead. We're very diligent on what we put in and on our bodies. We're the foods that we eat. And really, when you really start thinking about total health, it's mindset too, right? The repetitive thought that we have about ourselves or others, our self-limiting doubts, and especially in law enforcement, cynicism, has the tendency, it takes a lot of good people because, you're constantly dealing with this BS factor, and that in of itself, I think, impacts not only your well-being, but long-term health. And I would imagine that it has an impact on HRV and is probably an endocrine disruptor, it's definitely a hormonal disruptor. Yeah. And so I got really excited about this talk because, again, if you look at the state of America right now, where there's more attention around, well, let's redefine what healthy eating is. Because there's a lot of just things get all over the place, and in regards to what's healthy for you, what's not. It's definitely not healthy for you to eat a lot of processed foods and vegetable oils. And if we can take that same common sense approach in the way that, what we do in our organizations from a systems approach with leadership, we'd all be thriving and in a lot happier spot.
I agree. And, mindset is driven and trained by a repetitive series of steps over and over again, but it becomes concrete in who you are. It's not just a process, it's a state of being, and you mentioned it in law enforcement that we typically see this cynicism, which is really a pattern of developing excuses on why you can't or why it won't. It's a negative place, And when you're talking about lifestyle and things like this, you can't allow excuses to be part of your life. I was sharing at that same conference about mindset. Mindset is mission-minded. We're going to go forward, and I'm not going to let excuses get in my way. I don't believe in excuses. The closer you get to the backside of the pig, the more that backside smells, and that's what excuses look like. Everybody can make them, but we all get paid 1,440 minutes a day. And what we do with those times, those minutes, is up to us. And you're right, Brian, there's plenty of good food out here. I don't have any. We say, well, I'm traveling. I don't care. That means you've got opportunities for better places. It's good. I'm traveling. Okay, fine. You got a gym at the hotel, or you got a stairwell. There's always something that you can do. And you mentioned functional medicine. It's almost like way back when we had, problem-oriented policing. You look at the upstream problems or the upstream causes of downstream crime. And if you can prevent the upstream causes, in this case of downstream disease, man, that's a win. Why wouldn't you do that? A wellness mindset is that same mindset that says, I'm going to search for and pursue the upstream root causes of diseases that are classified as groups of symptoms. Therefore, when I fix those, I don't have to worry about disease. I'm not distracted by death, disease, sickness, lack, and fear, and all those things.
Well, first off, I didn't know Brian's wife was a functional medical coach. So, Brian, we ought to talk more for sure. And secondly, Mark, I want to give you some credit here. Probably most people listening to this can think of the big YouTube sensations that have popped up in a few years to talk about this. Right now it's RFK and it's Casey Means, bunch of other, doctors out there, Andrew Huberman, all these people that have these big platforms. Man, you've been grinding for 2 decades. Like, I've been around you for well over 2 decades, and you were saying this stuff years ago when it wasn't popular, when it wasn't sort of getting mainstream. So I got to give you a lot of credit. It's pretty incredible where you've come from. I mean, because you're a foremost expert in the world on this. You may not have the YouTube followers or whatever these people have, but trust me, you are, and you have patients in probably all 50 states. I'm in your clinic, a couple times a month just to hang out and to see how much I can afford from the supplement angle. And there's people, you're shipping stuff out every day all over the country. So I know you have those patients. I actually know you have some patients that people will all recognize, famous patients. We won't talk about that. So how frustrating, how did you get through that grind? Because, Brian and I always talk about, you got to lead yourself first. And I think this topic is how you can lead yourself first. You've got to get healthy. You've got to understand your body and what's going on. But I'm curious to know your resilience on all those years, and you still face it, but all those years of you saying this and people just laughing it off. And now we wake up and you have presidential candidates wearing "Make America Healthy Again" hats, right? I mean, it just kind of flipped all of a sudden. I'm curious to know your resilience on what it took for you to just go, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I know there's not money. I mean, you're making a little bit of money now, but you spent years not making any money, giving money up to do this. Yeah. I think our audience is very important to understand the will to keep going. Talk to us about that resilience and what you did in your life to make sure you were able to get here where you were today.
Well, it's kind of like working out. How do you get stronger? You face bigger challenges. You pick up bigger weights. You move more obstacles. And how do you get through a training academy? Somebody pushes you to do that more. It's like that whole mindset thing that says you're not going to quit. When you have a call to do something, you're miserable if you don't do the call. And there's been times, of course, Travis and Brian, where I'm wanting to say, screw this, man. And I'm tired. I've been fighting this battle, even I was with the TPD for 24 years with you, Travis. And, you think I didn't hear those conversations that were supposedly behind my back. They weren't behind my back. They always come out, man. And it's like, you go, God, come on, guys. I'm just trying to help you. There was times where we wanted to quit. But when you're called to do something, you have to keep on doing it. My wife has an interesting, very similar call, Dr. Michelle. She was kicked out of medicine because too many people got too well. And she wasn't recommending procedures that didn't need to be done. So our paths collided, and now we do it together. And it's interesting. You're right. We've been doing this for 2 decades, and we got kind of agitated recently, and we started calling ourselves the original biohackers, or the OG biohackers, because I thought, man, y'all, the whole idea of Huberman and Means and all that, come on, man, they're jumping on the bandwagon, and good on them. I'm glad. And it's interesting. A lot of people don't know this. I was talking to RFK in a tent probably 3 years ago before his presidential decision to run. And we were talking fitness and health. And I was thinking to myself, hey, pretty cool guy. He probably gets this a little bit, and now to watch him, it's like freaks me out, And I'm glad on one hand. I really am glad there's a movement going that way. But they're not saying anything that is a surprise to me at all. And I kind of wish they'd be a little stronger with it because they need to be. But we're not going to quit. I think probably in all of us there's a desire to quit, being transparent. But as you guys both know, if the good Lord calls you to do something, it's from him. It'd be like Moses saying, I don't want nothing to do with those Israelite people. I sometimes feel like the Moses of the biohacking world. I'm saying, people, you're getting crushed here. get your ass out of that situation, and they keep going back to it. So I'm not going to quit. We're going to keep on going, but that's kind of what makes me tick.
Doc, I have a question for you because, I've been to a biohacking conference and it was pretty fun. You get to see all these neat gadgets and everything else, but you start looking around the room, and I think there's some people that are at these events and they're just looking for shortcuts or supplements, and their problems are foundational, right? They're not sleeping, they're not eating right, they're not getting the right amount of movement, or those just essential things are kind of cattywampus. And I once heard this quote that I loved because it's like, hey, choose your heart. Yeah. Right? Do you want exercise to be your heart, or do you want like illness to be your heart? So where do you want to be on that spectrum? Choose your heart. And it's like, okay, well, if I want to not feel good and have a poor diet, that's a hard. Or I could, I eat for the most part, very, very clean, and it's delicious because, you got to kind of find the things that work for you. So where would you, if, to an officer who's kind of struggling with maybe some foundationals, what, do you have like a big five or a, top three, like, instead of chasing a supplement to hey, I need some melatonin because I like I'm not sleeping. Like, what are things that you think that people need to be like foundational, rock solid? You have to have these before moving to steps, B, C, D.
Well, I think that, and you're right. We deal with all of that. There's 8 sort of pillars to what we do. And that's going to be nutrition, sleep, stress management, movement, the things we have kind of control over. And then we talk about genetics, hormones, peptides, and supplements. And no matter how you slice the pie, you can't pill away, hormone away, supplement away, poor lifestyle choices. You can't pray that away. It's just always the consequences you're dealing with. So with law enforcement, you got to kind of look beyond law enforcement and realize that's not who you are, that's what you do, but the call of that and to do that is within you. You've got to see beyond that. You're going to go to work and you've got to somehow, check out of that work mode and be a home person, and so I think number one for law enforcement is realizing that is a job that you do well. It's a call, but you've got to be safe and go home. And then when you're home, you got to be able to live and not just sit there and smolder and die. But there are some action steps that people do. And I used to do this when I worked on the streets, and Travis can vouch for this. You want to sort of abstain from that eating out at those garbage dump restaurants. You don't have to do that. To that end, you can bring your own stuff. I brought my own food pretty much all the time. And some of the restaurants, I would go in there with the guys and I would say, would you mind if I heat this up? And they would heat it up for me. I don't know if that was breaking any food handlers laws or not, but they did it. And I was grateful. Sometimes I just got a salad, because nobody else needs to dictate what I eat. Today, when I'm here in my offices or on the road, I might use some of our own designed food products that we've carried around and made. There's many options today, but that's number one. You've got to begin to bring and or supply and or plan for that meal while you're there. I think number two is hydration. A lot of times we don't eat or drink because we think we got to go pee every few minutes. But actually, if you don't drink, the dehydration is worse than the being adequately hydrated. The body is 65% water, and if you become dry, that's a strain on your heart, etc. So there's food, then there's hydration. That's 2. Then I think supplementation. There's a lot of officers out there that need to be on 3 things minimum every day of their lives. That's a good multivitamin mineral. That's a high dose vitamin D. I'm going to say 5,000 IUs with a companion of K1 and K2. I like it 250 micrograms of K2 with it. And the third one they need to have is omega-3 fatty acids. Brian and Travis, 100% of the time, of all the thousands of people I've tested around this country and world, and Travis, you're right, we probably got somebody in every state now, 100% of the people have been deficient. So you need 3 grams of a high dose omega-3 fatty acid that has EPA and DHA. So we've talked about, food, water, supplementation. Then we got to talk about activity. Every single time you get out of that patrol car, man, you need to be out walking somewhere. And if you park in a parking lot, I would say walk around your car several times, man. Get out at night if it's midnight shift and walk around, stand around outside. You still got your radio with you. Make movement a part of life. And the 5th thing is you got to work that sleep schedule. You mentioned melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone. It's a natural hormone. You sometimes have to use that. But when you start to think about sleep, you got to think about, if you are night work, you got to think about blackout curtains. You got to think about the noise. You got to think about the temperature. You're going to sleep better in the 60s or so. And you got to think about night lights. Night lights need to be yellow or red as opposed to white or blue, because white and blue is like the sunshine or sky, and yellow and red is like fire. And so those 5 things, if people just do those, everybody, you're going to have a better health pattern that's inside of you that cultivates to wellness.
Yeah, I'll throw a couple other tricks in there, Mark. Of course, you know me better than myself when it comes to this stuff. Blue light glasses. Out of your phone, off of the TVs. And if you are on them, get the blue light glasses on before bed, a couple hours before bed. That made a tremendous difference. Yeah. I have those on my regular glasses that I never wear here on the air because I'm conscious about looking too old. But anyway, I have specific blue light glasses called Swankies. I believe they're high quality, and it made a tremendous difference in my sleep. And you're right about any of the lights emitting in bed. You can go to Amazon. You can buy these sort of blue light lights or whatever if you need a little light in the room. But there's some small things, and I enjoyed doing it. I've gone down this rabbit hole. But you said something, Mark, that I have been preaching to the profession for decades, and they don't seem to be understanding it, even to my own kids. You cannot just go to Walmart or Costco and buy supplements because there's no regulation on these supplements, and you have no idea what you're taking. So explain to our audience the good manufacturing products and the certifications needed in supplements and where they can find those, because it's not just looking at Amazon reviews. That's not where you need to go look for these things. And yes, you may have to spend a little more money. It's not a lot more, but you're going to actually get benefit on what you're taking. Kind of explain to our audience the supplement industry, how destructive that is, and what they need to do with this supplementation.
Well, you're talking tens of billions of dollars in the industry, right? So it's a major deal, and America is kind of trained to go that way, because we're trained to go that way because big pharma is take a pill for an ill, and of course we know that's not working. But they say, well, do this angle. This is a pill for an ill. It's just green pharmacy is all it is, and so there are an innumerable amount of manufacturers out there, and you could actually manufacture a supplement line in your own garage with no regulation at all. Now, the FDA has some oversight to it. And here it is. As long as you don't say that what you make or package or sell cures, treats, prevents, or mitigates disease, as long as you don't say that, make that claim, it's fine. You can use it. And it can be sold in the open market out there. And you can get stuff like someone could buy a probiotic and it could have X ingredients on the label, but it could have Y ingredients in actuality. Or it could have had X ingredients in the label when they put it in there, but once it got out to the manufacturer or the place where they're going to do the point of sale to Consumer Base USA, it might not have any potency left. So I would not recommend anyone buy any supplements from any pharmacy, any chain, even any supplement store that's out there open to the public. And that's a pretty strong statement. But I do, because I know by experience. I mean, we actually manufacture things. I know what it's like to go source the materials and have it go through the processing. And the way it should work, and there's probably, I don't know, less than 10 labs across the country that handle it in the way they should. When you get in materials, which are raw materials, and some of them are indeed purchased from China, by the way, you are supposed to go there and quarantine those things off before you ever put them into a production line. And you have to test those things for the presence of heavy metals and poisons and toxins and all those things. If it passes that, then you can bring it in the production line. You start combining it within a production line, and you come up with a product. The product is then packaged, labeled accordingly, and sent out in the open market. There is a process called good manufacturing practices, which has an FDA connection, which has inspectors connected to it, which are connected to the organization, and they can go out and inspect your product. But to get that certification, what you do and what you produce has to follow all those guidelines that I just laid out for you, in addition to up to 2 years later, after the product manufacturing date, that product has to have what is said to be in there or more present all the time. If they catch anything that violates that, you lose those certification. And so it's a massively important operation to do it like that. It does cost a little bit more, but you're not talking a lot more. You're talking maybe 15 to 20% more. That's it. But I look at it like 15 to 20% more cost, 100% more effectiveness. It's like buying a car that's you're going to run for 15 years versus a car that might last you 2. I want the one that's going to give me the better value.
100%. What's your thoughts on third-party testing when it comes to supplements? You want to take us?
Yeah, I love third-party testing. And a lot of these places on those guidelines Brian's talked about, that is third-party testing, because the third party is coming in there and analyzing that spec, that specimen you got, and they've got to make sure it meets those needs. So absolutely, it's right. That's where you get even into these studies today, these medical studies and things. And I read a lot of medical journals just because I have to. I got a lot of catching up to do, man. My wife is smarter and more pretty than I am. But the bottom line is, a lot of these studies are not really third party. They're the peer reviewed. They'll have people they just pay to sign off on it. It's in-house stuff funded by big pharma for a specific purpose. So I'm a big believer in truly independent third-party testing that has no connection to the company or even the owners of the company.
Mark, I don't want to spook people, but I think it's important for people to know the dangers that are lurking literally everywhere, from our water to the food being produced right now. It's almost overwhelming. I mean, and there's a whole political animal on how we got here in America, why our life expectancy is not going higher, it's going lower for an industrialized nation, which is crazy. I'm glad on the national scene, there's some people talking about this. You've heard a lot about the cereals that only are made in America because the substances are banned overseas. But talk to us about some of those dangers. And the ones that really bother me is when you go to a grocery store and you see the organic products and the non-organic products. And of course, the organic are 3 times the money. I know people probably can't afford that. What's in the water? I know there's an issue with fluoride. There's just a lot of dangers in healthy things that you think are healthy. If you think, these vegetables are healthy because that's what I've been told. But if they've been grown in the wrong way or pesticides being used, it's actually more dangerous. Kind of give us an overview of what is out there and some of the things we need to be looking for before we purchase some of these items.
Well, start with water. You need to filter your water because water today does contain a lot of fluoride. Fluoride is a known thyroid disruptor. And there's many people out there today that are walking around with hypothyroid conditions, which can drive weight gain or sort of contribute to the obesity crisis and more. A lot of people don't know that water in city waters, they don't filter out all the drugs. So you have statin drugs, which are given out like candy today. And then you have birth control, which are given to little girls like candy as well. And so with those two combinations right there, let's think through that. Why are we seeing this estrogenic trend or this female trend, this demasculization of our world from the little kid level? It's because of water, at least in part. And so that stuff needs to be filtered out. And so you need to get a home filter or at least get a sink filter. And then I absolutely believe that your water, you need to pour it inside of a little a bottle or machine that sort of brings molecular hydrogen into the water so that the water now carries the hydrogen in. I got my little one my desk right here. So I fill it up with water and drink that several times a day. So I'll get maybe 60 ounces of the molecular hydrogen water, because the hydrogen can penetrate the cells and reduce any excess free radical damage or inflammation. So that's a good little trick with your water. Everybody should be doing that. Those are no-brainers because the water is not safe today. And every time you take a bath in that stuff, you're basically taking a bath in estrogen, guys. So it gives a whole new meaning to the word soy boy, doesn't it? Right. And then we talk about food. Our country is pathetic in the way we treat our people. We feed them food that's not fit for human consumption. It's not even classified as food. You know, I look at it simply like this. If food is not in its original package, the way God intended, it never was food. And so you mentioned cereals with the red dyes, blue dyes, green dyes, chemicals. I mean, vegetables and fruits that are out there produced in a genetic modification method and or utilizing Roundup, which has glyphosate, which is a known carcinogen, and atrazine, which is a known estrogenic compound. So now you're seeing these subsidized, cheap processed foods cheaper given to our people, and we consume them and we get sick. And I am trying to put, I mean, I'll use the term trying to put fear into people. We need to be scared of it. This government has hijacked our food supply and our life supply, and they have just absolutely crushed our nation. The obesity crisis, the sickness crisis we have going on, Brian, Travis, this is our true enemy. It's the worst bad guy out there. It's the bad guy from within. And we have to begin to be independent of that. Find local farmers. Stay on the perimeter of your grocery store. Stay out of the inside unless you're going to go in there and buy cleaners or toilet paper. You know, I mean, it's that bad. But we have an awareness today that not all hope is lost. We have an awareness today, thankfully, because of some people you mentioned, the top of the show, and the movement that is. People are tired of it. They're starting to recognize it. The voice is starting to get heard, and I'm encouraged by that. But if there's somebody like listening today that says, I need to start doing that, this whole broadcast has been for you. And that's the point. And that makes me happy if you get that message.
Mark, my wife and I at lunch today, it was funny. We were talking about, we're looking at research on the average American. I mean, it's like close to 60% of people are intimidated by the kitchen, right? Yeah. So they're like, and so if they don't know how to cook, then they're lost and like, I need to get somebody to, and it's crazy to see how many times that the average person goes out and eats at a restaurant, and now you're exposing yourself to, whatever cooking oil is probably the cheapest that a restaurant can get, maybe, a lot of other processing, maybe way out of the calorie range that you should be eating. And so we're constantly disappointed when we go out and eat because, what my wife can do at home 100 times better. And so I think the challenge for me, though, is that the average person who doesn't have any awareness just thinks that, okay, a grocery store sell everything that's inside the grocery store is edible and we can eat it and it's okay because somebody has said that, this isn't going to, harm me. And it's the furthest thing from the truth. So, where do you think, I mean, and then you go to the internet. The other issue is you start to kind of do a search and it's low carb, no carb, vegan. And so, where do you point somebody who's just kind of looking for that? I really don't know what to believe. The internet is not always the place. I mean, one article says eggs are bad. Another one says they're good. One's telling me to go vegan, where does one start?
Well, first, I think a good overall premise, Brian, is to understand this statement. Don't diet. Diet is strictly about limitation. It's about focusing on what you shouldn't be doing versus what you should be doing. It always has a negative attached to it. You need to eat foods that are in their normal packaging. And the reason some diets, I've heard people are hyped up on carnivore or paleo or whatever you put to it. The reason they're successful is, in any of those, is because people don't eat processed foods. That's the point, right? So you eliminate the things that really are causing the harm. And there are meal places today. You can find a lot of places. I mean, when I'm in my office here, we don't have a kitchen here in the office. And this is what I've done. We find places that will deliver salads. And I know where I'm getting the salads. And we'll do that, that Uber deliver food service, and they'll deliver it right here to the office. And I eat healthy like that, and there's all kinds of options today, even without cooking. And you mentioned, who do you listen to? This is a $1 trillion question. And there's some guidelines that I think people can sort of put in place. If you don't know them, they don't look like they live it, don't follow them. If they don't see people and they're a clinician, don't listen to them. And if you don't have someone that knows them personally, turn them off, because you're having an increased chance of walking down a pathway of being led astray by those things. And I'm not saying that's true across the board, but those guidelines, you can always count on that. And so there's a lot of TV doctors out here, a lot of, personalities that have millions of YouTube followers, and they're not getting in a ditch with people. They're not dealing with people's lives. And there's a whole issue with that, because it's easy to make a recommendation out here if you don't know who you're dealing with. It's harder to make a recommendation if you're looking across the desk or, across, StreamYard or whatever with people And so I always tell people, find the people in your area that you want to be like. Link up with them. Stay tight with them. And you can become like the 4 or 5 people you hang out with most. And if you pick those friends wisely, you pick those leaders wisely, you pick those mentors wisely, it's going to have an effect on you. Not just you becoming like them, but you becoming like you. Yeah, take the best of their world, apply it to your world, and make the best of your world, and let somebody else apply it to their world. It passes down goodness. It passes down influence. And that's all my wife and I have ever wanted to do. I think the greatest gift you can have is influence. It's more powerful than money, and it could be used both good and bad. And so find the people that are doing that and latch on to them tight and don't let them go.
Well, indeed, that is the definition of leadership, which is influence.
Yep.
That's this one in my mind. And it sounds like to me, Mark, that because Bill Nye doesn't have a science degree, we shouldn't listen to him. And Tony Fauci's never seen a patient. Maybe we should be very cautious about him. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I look at people and, I might even go here, Jesus was known as the great physician and never went to medical school. He never outsourced the case to Dr. Luke, and so these are basic principles. And so we sort of have classified expertise based upon a degree, but knowledge does not equal wisdom. You can have all kinds of knowledge and not know how to interpret it, and then that becomes a lack of wisdom. That becomes nonsense and garbage. Or you can ask for wisdom, which gives you the ability to see knowledge and interpret it correctly. And then, in my life, and my wife and I's life, we always are seeking out knowledge, but I'm not going to have knowledge without wisdom, because that's how we apply that. And that's how you can lead well.
I'm just pumped that we waited 38 minutes to mention that dirty little name named Tony. But anyway, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just going to say, I love earlier on, you're talking about some, advanced therapies like, peptides are starting to become a little bit more, gaining interest right now. And they, and I think the big challenge is that a lot of people don't know a lot about them. And because they're hard to get. I think even as interesting as peptides is bioregulators, which are kind of starting to come into the scene, and things like methylene blue, which is just a really fascinating compound. Other than the fact that it's going to turn your tongue blue and you're going to pee blue, you're going to have blue pee all around your toilet if you don't aim right. But tell me what your thoughts on doing good blood work, the importance of getting blood work. And It's one thing to go to the doctor every year and to get whatever panel your primary care physician gives you. But I had to be a real advocate with my primary care physician. And once I started asking questions about, hey, I want this panel and that panel, and he's like, why do you want it? And then it became not an issue because they're cheap panels. And it's like, okay, if you want to know your vitamin D levels, and if you want to know, your creatinine level and C-reactive protein, no harm, no foul. I'll give you a comprehensive metabolic panel and call it a day. How important is a blood panel, and how often do you recommend people, at least spending, even if they have to spend money out of their own pocket to get it? What's your thoughts?
Well, people should spend money out of their own pocket to get it. Here's why: because our insurance system is not designed by nature to teach you how to stay well. And the physicians that are in those systems don't really have the autonomy to get any panel they want. They are dictated by the bean counters and the insurance companies behind the scenes. And so we typically blame the doctors, but it's not their fault. You have to be your own advocate, and you have to become an expert. And a lot of people that I deal with, Brian and Travis, they're smarter about blood panels than the doctors do. And that's not saying that they're any better. They know more about it because the doctor does routine. This is what I was taught. This is why I do it. I check this, I do this. If these algorithms fit, I prescribe these medications, and you leave my office as soon as possible. So that system is broken. Give you an example. As you age, when you get to like 30, or specifically in the 4th decade, you need to be doing comprehensive blood panels every single year, and maybe even twice a year. Because what happens is, even with the molecule cholesterol, we've been erroneously taught that LDL cholesterol is bad and HDL is good. That could not be further from the truth. And just to test the total cholesterol is absolutely a foolish thing to do, and make some kind of weird decision on that, namely to prescribe a statin drug or not. Statin drugs are prescribed ad nauseum with that situation, and statin drugs sort of inhibit the production of this LDL cholesterol molecule, which we need for our brain. Are we seeing an increased risk of Alzheimer's? Yes. We also need cholesterol for cellular membrane repair, and we need it to manufacture hormones. Why are we seeing so many problems with hormones today? It's because of the statin drug usage crisis. But when you look at the LDL molecule, if you don't look at the oxidation behind it, in other words, a marker called ox-LDL, or you don't look at LPPLA2, which is known as plaque 2, you have no idea whether the molecule is getting damaged and building up plaque. So you're just taking a guess at it. So those other markers that are routinely done are routinely irrelevant, is what they are. And you have to look at the particle sizes. In other words, a person could have a lot of LDL cholesterol and be perfectly healthy and in good shape. At the same time, a person could have less LDL cholesterol and have all kinds of particle damage and heart disease. Another one is hemoglobin A1C. Let's check blood sugar. That is a fasting blood sugar. It looks at the average of the amount of glycation or sugar on that red blood cell in a 4-month window. Well, it's fasting. How about checking fasting insulin, which hangs around longer, and you get something called an insulin resistance score? You could be checking out well on hemoglobin A1C for a number of years, but behind the scenes, you could be subclinically insulin resistant. I see it all the time. And Brian, you mentioned CRP. That's a marker for chronic systemic inflammation. We should be checking that all the time, because all disease processes, every one of them, has a component, chronic systemic inflammation, as part of the disease etiology. So, these are just basic things that we should be checking. And if people are looking to get those from your primary care physician, you're probably not going to get it. I recommend people find a source where they can get it done cash. And you can even use like a health or flexible spending account in most cases to go out and get your own with no problems. And then find somebody that you know that can review it with you so that you're comfortable with what you're doing and why.
So Mark, someone's listening to this and, they've got to start. And that's the biggest hurdle, is starting. So what would you advise? I mean, what would you advise them to do? I mean, they need to find the right doctor. They need to get the right test. They need to find out their foundation of what they need to do. Give them some advice, regardless of where they live, how they can find that right doctor.
Well, in your area, you can get on like DuckDuckGo or Google search. You can say functional medicine in my area, and you're going to come up with all kinds of places. Read the reviews. I mean, really read those reviews and look at those. And remember, you're going to get good and bad and everything. And then call the places and actually interview them. Ask them the questions. And the questions I would ask is, what's your view on nutrition? And do you just talk about that? Because that's got to be number one. You got any testimonials? Where are they? Where can I see the testimonials? You know? And do you guys have some people you've worked with that I might want to talk to, might want to talk to me? You know? I mean, we do that all the time. If somebody wants that, no problem. And so I would do that, man, and I would check things out. And you can find somebody today. There's more and more out there. Now, I'll give people a caution with this. Functional medicine kind of has two sort of prongs. One is you might find a functional medicine person that just runs a bunch of cool tests and throws you a bunch of pills. Stay away from there, because that's immature functional medicine. Mature functional medicine is going to figure out what are some real issues upstream in my life that are creating disease processes, disease being dis-ease or lack of peace, leading to symptoms I've got. And that's the kind of person you want to look at, because then they will test what's appropriate, asking the questions, what needs to be done. They're not doing it just because it's a system. They're doing it because it's an individual. So that's the kind of areas you want to focus in.
Now, Mark, you've got a clinic, you and your wife. I'm sure you work with people all over the country. If they wanted to call you, reach out to you, you could probably start them on that journey, correct?
Yeah, it's easy. Again, I appreciate that. People can go to Sherwood.tv. That's where we're found. And every month, the second Tuesday of the month, we actually do a free webinar. Again, it don't cost anybody anything, because I don't want anybody paying me any money until they understand who we are. And in that webinar, which it starts at 6:30 p.m. Central, the second Tuesday of the month, you can register for that right now. I think the website says take the next step, get an appointment or whatever. And people listen to that webinar. We have hundreds that come on there every single month. And then they can ask questions in the virtual chat bar, and we answer those questions. My wife and I are actually on there. It's not somebody that we have doing it for us. We're doing it. And they schedule appointments with us because we got those appointments set aside. And so we have a lot of people that come in through that channel, and that's for everybody out there. And then we have a ton of referrals, people that can look on there. You can find testimonials. You can find reviews. There's resources on our websites that people can get for free. I mean, we're all about communicating information. And I can say this, we kind of want to accumulate hope dealers. You see that? Yeah.
Great stuff, Mark. Folks, if you're listening, I didn't just promote Mark because he's here on the show. I mean, I have personal knowledge of what he can do for you. And if you just need a place to start with somebody to talk to, just reach out to Mark. Mark, half of my appointments are on the phone with you. Like, I live in your town, but I don't always drive over there. So you guys can do a lot over the phone. Wherever they are, they can go get tested wherever they are, and those results can be sent to you. So there's a lot you can do mobile. So, we could probably keep on for another several hours because it's so fascinating. We'll bring you on later on in 2025. Folks, this is dropping near the end of 2024. This is your New Year's resolution podcast. So get excited and don't make it a resolution. Make it forever, because the value is beyond any amount of money or career or resume you can think of. Lead yourself first by taking care of yourself first. Dr. Sherwood, Brian Ellis, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.